Good afternoon and welcome to today's live. For those of you who joined in earlier when I tried to do this, I do apologise. We were about 2 minutes in and my daughter's school rang to say that she wasn't well and I needed to go and pick her up. The joys of being a working mother. Anyway, I'm back. She's on the sofa. Hi Ellie, lovely to have you with me live. I hope that you and the kiddywinks are well. So let me see if I can get all the way through this broadcast without an interruption. What I want to talk about is how to answer a tricky question. Now, this is something that I talk about a lot with people because quite often people fear questions because they worry that a question is some form of mild interrogation and that somebody is being confrontational asking a question. So first things first, I want to blow that right out of the water. In my experience, which is vast, there are two reasons that people ask questions. One is because they want to improve their understanding of what you're saying. Or secondly, they want to understand your reasoning behind whatever it is that you're telling them. Okay, so two reasons that people ask a question. They either want to enhance their understanding of what you're saying or they want to understand your reasoning more. It tends to be only one of two things, unless you know someone really annoying who just asks questions because they like the sound of their own advice. My guidance to you is ditch them out of your network ASAP. So you're just left with the genuine question askers. Now, the thing to remember about when you are speaking, and quite often we worry about receiving questions from a group of people, maybe a team or a collection of people that we're sharing news with at one point in time. But when you speak, even if it's just to one person, if you're communicating something important, the best advice I could give you is to remember that you are in service. You are in service to them. It's not about show and tell everything you know on a subject. When you communicate something important, it's about picking the pieces of information that you need to share so that the person or people that you're talking to understand wholly the situation. They have an opportunity to react to it, and they've understood it to the point where they could repeat it to somebody else if they needed to. Your job is to serve them when you speak. So therefore, questions are not something that should be avoided or feared. Questions are brilliant because when someone asks you a question, it shows that they are interested. They're either interested in learning more for themselves or learning more about you. So never approach them from a fear-based angle. So let me talk to you, because the video is short, we haven't got all the time in the world, how to handle both of the scenarios I've mentioned. One, someone's asking you because they want to understand what you're saying better. And secondly, they want to understand your reasoning better. So first case scenario, if somebody wants to understand what you're saying more, they're confused, they just don't get it, they are likely to ask you a question. The best thing you can do in that moment is to just take a breath, because sometimes we fall into that terrible trap where we finish someone's sentence for them. Sometimes we do it verbally. Sometimes we finish their sentence verbally, and sometimes we just do it in our head. Now, the trouble that you'll get into when you finish someone's sentence when they are asking you a question is sometimes you think they're asking one question, they actually didn't, because you didn't listen. So take a beat, just a heartbeat, a breath, let them get to the end of their question. And the best advice I could give you, and they ask you a tricky question and you think it's because they want to understand more, ask them a question in response. So this might feel like you're being a little bit of a politician, but the best thing you can do when you're faced with a tricky question is ask a question straight back of them. And the question that I would encourage you to ask when someone asks you a question is to say, great question, where's that coming from? Or, okay, great question, tell me why you're asking that. Or, great question, what do you mean by that? Or, okay, great question, can you explain a little bit more? You want to ask a question straight back at them, because then it does a few things. It helps you, most importantly, to understand why they are asking the question. Because if you don't clarify why they want to know the answer to that question, what will happen is you'll fill in the gaps. You will make an assumption of why they're asking. And normally in these situations, if we are afraid of questions, we often think people ask questions because they are trying to be confrontational to us. They disagree with what we're saying. They don't believe us. They don't want the change to happen. They don't want to hear what we've got to say. So many times we just misjudge the situation. And if you'd have asked where the question is coming from, you'd have found that there's a very different story than the one that you have made up in your head. And when we make up a story, we are assuming that something is the case. And for those of you who know me well, you will have heard me say on numerous occasions, assumption is the mother of all mess ups. So try and stay out of assumption and don't join your own dots up to make 5 when they should make 4. Ask a question. Great question. Why do you ask? Great question. Where's that coming from? Or that's a great question. Tell me more. Because automatically you'll understand. And this works with adults, teens, kids. When you ask them, you find out the truth. One day I said to Ethan, Saturday afternoon, I said to him, can you pop out and clean my car for me this afternoon? And his reaction was, oh, well, can I do it tomorrow? Now, the assumption in my mum brain was, lazy, stop watching The Mandalorian, get off the sofa and go and wash my car. Where actually, instead of shouting at him or saying to him, no, you can't do it tomorrow, I want you to do it day go, what I actually learned to do was follow my own advice. And I said to him, why do you want to do it tomorrow? So straight back with a question. And then he said to me, because Dom's just contacted me and asked me if I want to go out with him and his family to go out this afternoon. Is it okay if I do it tomorrow? So in that scenario, the assumption I'd made was that he's lazy, can't be asked to wash my car. The reality is that he has been invited to do something far more interesting than washing my car, and he just wants to delay doing it until tomorrow. Had I not asked that question straight back at him, I wouldn't have understood the story, the reality. I'd have made an assumption and we'd have fallen out. And that would have just been a shame. And likewise, I've been in team meetings when I've had a boss who's communicating a change to us, and one of my colleagues has said, so why is this only happening now? Now, the manager must have felt very awkward about the situation because they've assumed that the employee is challenging them as to it should have happened sooner, or, you know, we don't want the change, and just really gone on the offensive. Had they asked that person, interesting, why do you ask? Then my colleague would have said to them, because I think we should have done this ages ago. I'm totally loving the fact that we're going to start this now. Because that's the reality. The manager made the assumption they were being confrontational and reacted in a totally unnecessary way. So when you're asked a question, train yourself, come straight back with a question. Interesting, tell me more. Or interesting question, why do you ask? Or that's a good question, where's that coming from? Because someone will tell you the reality of the story and you'll understand why they're asking. The other thing it does is when you listen and you take time to listen fully to the end, don't speak until they've dropped a full stop at the end of their question. It tells the person that you care enough about them to listen because you are giving them your time. The other thing it does is it gives you a chance to think of a reply, because sometimes our mind goes blank when we're asked a question. By just asking a question straight back, it gives us time to formulate a response. And also, by then, they've dropped the reason behind the question, we've understood them properly. Therefore, the answer to our question is likely to be far better than it would have been if we'd have answered them making an assumption. So, that's how to reply to a question that you're asked when somebody wants to understand more themselves. The reverse happens, or the same thing happens in exactly the reverse situation. When somebody wants to and chooses to question you because they want to know your reasoning for a piece of information, often it's because we left something out. So in this type of scenario, it's often when we want to convey what we think will be emotive information or a message that someone doesn't want to hear, or we're instigating some sort of change, or we're sharing a new piece of information with a team, if we think, oh my God, when I tell them this, they're going to go off the deep end, what happens is, in our attempt to preserve our sanity and our dignity, we try and avoid being asked questions. And what we tend to do, and you can let me know in the comments below if you've ever done this, to avoid being questioned on it, what we do is we almost tell half a story and we miss out the dots that we think will allow people to ask questions. Now, the trouble with that is, by telling half a story, you open yourself up to more questions, because people don't always understand what you're saying because you've missed steps out in the sequence, or you look uncomfortable because you know you're not telling them the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And so they ask you questions to understand your reasoning and your motivation. So you make it worse. So if you want to deliver a piece of information to a person or a team that you think they're not going to respond too well with, can I suggest you do a couple of things? Prepare. Think about 3 simple questions before you deliver a piece of communication like that. Think about, who is it that you're actually telling? What are they likely to feel about what you're going to say? And what questions might they have? If you take the time to engage your brain before you engage your mouth on something that is emotive or unexpected, if you answer those 3 questions, you will find that by thinking about who they are that you're actually speaking to, what it is that you think they're going to feel as a result, which emotions you think they're going to feel as a result of hearing your piece of information, and what questions you'll leave them with, you can answer the questions in your content. Because it's really easy to deliver a piece of information and then say to them, look, I know many of you will be feeling worried about how this is actually going to work. Well, don't worry, we're going to step through the new process together and we're going to review it at the end of each week. Or I know that for many of you this might come as a shock, and I just want you to know that I'm going to have an open door policy for the rest of this week. Please feel free to pop in and let me know how you're feeling. Or it could be to a family member or a partner. You say, look, I know that this isn't likely to be what you want to hear, but I need you to know it's important for me to be honest with you because I want to protect our friendship going forwards. So think about, who are they, how will they feel, and what questions might they have? And if you can work out what questions they might ask you, you can get those answers into your communication. And it means that at the end, you're less likely to get communication issues and gaps, because people only ask questions for 2 reasons: to enhance their own understanding or to work out where you're coming from. If you give them the whole story and you take time to answer their questions authentically, at the end, you will find that you can move into a really confident place when you are facing tricky pieces of communication and tricky questions, because you don't have to know all the answers. I know that most of us have been in situations where we've really respected the fact that we've asked a question and the person we've asked it to will say, do you know what? I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to come back to you. No one says you have to have all the answers. You can, it's as easy to say to a family member, look, I had no idea that this would feel that important to you. Let me just think on it a bit more and I'll come back to you later on. Or, there's 101 scenarios. I can't list them all. It'll bore you to death, but you get my drift. No matter what scenario you're in, tell the complete story. If it's emotive, prepare well and answer the questions you think you'll get in your content. If it's not emotive and you're just delivering a piece of information, you get an unexpected question out of the blue, take time to listen to the question to the end so that you can ask a question straight back and listen to the answer. That will tell you what your response should be, and it will also tell you that the person who asked it is important enough for you that you gave their question airtime. That will change the way you feel about these scenarios in the fastest way that I could offer you. So 5 top tips when it comes to answering tricky questions. Number 1, do not fear them. Questions are an opportunity for connection because they enhance understanding. Point number 2, avoid the trap of questions that you think you'll get by preparing well. You can put those in there. The third thing, answer a question with a question. Always train yourself, whether it's your child. I mean, my kids, they know, even if it's, Mum, why does the moon sometimes out at the same time as the sun? Number 1, I don't know the answer to that question. Number 2, I've trained myself to say, I don't know, why do you think it's out? Why does Nanny do that every time we go and see her? I don't know. Why do you think she does it? Ask a question straight back, because 9 times out of 10 they can answer it themselves anyway. It saves you not knowing. But when it's important, you'll get to the nub of an issue. The 4th piece of advice, listen to understand someone, not just to reply. So when you listen to understand a question, not just close your mouth while you're listening because you want to reply, everything changes. And then the 5th piece of advice is remember to tell the whole story. If you do that, you avoid questions you don't want to answer. I hope you found that useful. So Diane, I'm really sorry if the signal was my end. I'll watch it back on replay and hopefully the bad connection was your end and this will all become crystal clear. If not, I'll just do another one later. So lovely to see you, Ellie. Lovely to see you, Diane. I hope you're enjoying these videos. Please tell me your thoughts below and I will see you back here later this week for the video on how to handle awkward silences. Oh, and Friday at 3 o'clock, Bryony Tilley is joining me in the page live for the communication hot seat. Oh yes, I just made that up. But she's going to be in the communication hot seat on Friday at 3. Okay, I'll see you all soon. Bye.